Hello. For those of you who didn't make it out to Eustis to Lake Norris for the 12 points challenge, you'll get to see the course here. I'm going to kind of take you on a little tour of the course. The way it works is you have three different segments, one paddle, one bike, and one foot. We're right here actually at the transition area, and I had turned on my GPS and it tracked us the whole way. And what I'll do is I'll narrate as we actually go through the course, and I'll speed up and slow down in other places so I can kind of go over the details. This is Mark Roberts and Ron England, and kind of give you an idea of the race itself. Now, the race may be a misnomer for us because we weren't really pushing that terribly hard, and I was actually having a lot of fun with just playing with the navigation and trying out different paths. So some of the things we would have done in a really tough race, we didn't take a lot of effort to do. So we're here heading for CP1, and this would be the most direct route. CP1 is actually just, if I took a right turn there, that little side road would have taken me right there. But we saw the guy who was the owner of the land over here who had sold all this, and we stopped to talk to him, and he told us of some unique places to go. So we did. We decided to take a slightly different route, even though we could have cut straight across that field and gone straight to it. Nice guy, told us about how Disney wanted to buy the land back in those days. And here we're just kind of trotting along, nice and easy. And we decided we would go past there's a little creek you can't see there, and we were going to cut through the cow pasture here. And different route to get there. Turns out it was a little bit harder route than had we just taken the direct line. Here I fell and twisted my ankle, so we slowed down our motion through here. Also knowing that we knew at this point we'd have a fairly significant bushwhack that we'd have to do. And but this really did add some navigational challenges to the whole thing, because what we're going to do here is we're going to try a due south bushwhack through what appeared on the map to be a pretty deep marsh. It was not too early when we got up in here. I mean, we left at a little after 7 o'clock, and it was really dark underneath this heavy canopy. And you can kind of see here as there's some spots where it was slow going. We ended up crossing a creek again, and this is kind of a relative speed since I've got this sped up quite a bit. I'm going to stop it for a second so you can actually get an idea of how close we were to where we were. If you look over here, this little trail, and follow it back, cut this direction, that's our trail right there. So now we'll continue back where we were. But either way, we ended up running right into the fire break here, which we kind of knew would take us very close to the flag. And I'm going to speed it up as we move past CP1. This is all now at this point swamp whack, probably shin deep water in a lot of places, but not terribly tough terrain, but not something you're going to just fly through. A lot of just knocking down spider webs and jumping over logs and that type of stuff. Here we were coming out, we hit this vegetation boundary, and we could move a lot quicker along the edge of the swamp vegetation boundary, but I knew at this point we were heading a little too far north, so we had to punch through trying to get to this road. This was one of the things I wanted to do, was cut across this old sand mine. It was a weekend. There's sometimes construction here during the week, but this was a lot of fun going and seeing this area. We punched straight across. I thought we were pretty close to the control at this point, and we were. You can kind of see it right up there in the distance. It's across the lake. You couldn't see that we were on this little peninsula here that we went on, turned back, and realized, you know what, we better go around the lake and not straight through it. Picked up CP4, and then a nice, easy run along the edge, or walk for us along the edge of the lake. We ran into Eric and Juno from Utility Mutants coming the other direction, and we saw another team coming the other direction. We did this in order 1, 4, 3, 2. Now up here, I was expecting to make a left turn, kind of head for the next control, so we did. This trail went down here, dead-ended, went back, said, you know what, we'll try the other trail, went that way. It was turning the wrong way, so we doubled back. So we spent about 10 minutes going the wrong way there. went a little bit further, and sure enough, here's the trail split we should have taken. And the idea here was very simple. We wanted to get out into this open area. When we got out here, this was private land, so we just scuttled along the edge of it, and kind of took a little detour through the woods here just to make sure we didn't bother this guy or his cows that were out there. Once we got to this very far end, we just scuttled across and found a fence line, and this was really straightforward. So CP3, we thought there was a fence line here. It was the boundary of the property, and we just followed up to CP3, which is on the corner of the fence line, and then it's just a straight shot due south along the fence line back. When we got about this far in, we knew we could head just taking the fence line south, but it was pretty tough going any way we went, so we decided to cut across and aim us a little closer to the next flag. We did double back in a couple places just to get out of the heaviest of the vegetation here. At this point, wonderful run or walk right across these big fields. As we came up over, there's a little hilltop here, and as we came up over the hilltop, we could see the two concrete pads that were supposed to be where the control was. We headed for the concrete pads, and sure enough, no control. Now, we kind of figured this out a little later. We decided to, I was taking us back, and we then turned back around and decided to head back for the TA. And as I was heading back to the TA, right about here, I realized, guess what? We went to the wrong concrete pads. Went right back over where we had been. I guess looking at the map a little bit more would have helped. And then here we ran into utility mutants again, right here at the entrance here, and tried to send them back to CP1, and finally finished up our little trek back up into to the TA. All in all, it took us a little bit over 4 hours. If we'd really been paying close attention, I think it was quite doable in 3, or maybe even less. But at this point, remember, we're having a good time, so that's the whole idea. Next thing we had to do was we were going to head out on a paddle, and this was really cool. We had some nice areas that we got to be able to paddle here. Can't really see much of this, so I'm gonna kind of push through. This is all just following the creek out to Lake Norris, and at the Lake Norris Conservation Area, there is a put-in right there, and it's really cool. This is a wonderful paddle. It actually is cut out nicely. There was only one log hop that we had to do, and coming out onto the lake was incredible. All those spots you see in the lake were cypress trees that are actually in the lake itself. We had heavy wind at this point, and I decided just to take a bearing and punch across the lake. Where we might have been a little bit better just going along the edge of the lake because the control was there, but again, we're just taking it easy. And that was a nice little exciting thing to do. CP6 was just hidden in a little area right amongst all these cypress trees, and at this point we punched back across, saw a couple other kayakers cuddling down the edge of the lake, but at this point here, it was simply push the boat, cross the lake as fast as you can, because we had very heavy wind, and we were just bouncing the boat up and down, and we were heading to a spot on the other shoreline. Once we got there, we had just to find an entrance, and CP7 was really a nice one. We got in there. We had to go on foot. You're not going to see a whole lot because I didn't take the pack with me, so the GPS sat there. But we went up in, and it's probably a little further than I had shown there. But we went up in there, and there was a couple of boils with a beautiful creek, nice area. Fortunately, my pack was in the boat, and my camera was in the pack, and I didn't get any pictures of it. With the heavy wind, it made a lot of sense to stay along the shoreline here, and once we got out into this portion of the lake, it was just the wind was coming directly pretty much out of the northeast, and we're heading east right now. This was just looking for an entrance of a canal, and there was no way to see the entrance of the canal. Even when we got to it, you could just see a little bit of flow coming out of it, but it was an easy find because it was just the easternmost part of the lake. We were able to boogie on this little section here because now we have the wind at our back, and we were surfing the boat, making it go nicely over all the waves, and this was a lot of fun. and we'd paddle really hard to catch a wave, and then we'd keep the nose of the boat down in the dip, and you know, have a little bit of fun with this. Maybe took us about half an hour to make that paddle back across, and then of course back into the creek, which I'm going to just follow this along here. Now at this point we were running about 8 hours into the race, 7.5 or so, and I knew it would take us at least an hour to go down and get this next checkpoint. Thinking, maybe I'll hit the bike, because this section said not navigable waterway, and we had 4 or 5 signs that said not navigable waterway. At this point here, we decided that we were just going to abandon the boat, come out, go on foot along the edge of the creek, and look for this thing. And so we were doing that. We were looking for it and not having much success. So I knew that there was a field to the north, jumped out to the field, found it, and we're good. On a culvert along the field, then we decided to cut straight back over to the boat, which we did on foot, came back, scuttled along the edge of the creek, found the boat, and away we go back up the creek, over all the deadfalls. Some pretty heavy stuff, but not quite sure what I did there. That was not actually what we did. I think that was just the GPS going crazy because the batteries were dying. Now, at this point, we're switching over to bicycle, and we were only going to have enough time to get a couple of bike points. So we did this transition relatively fast, even though we weren't in a hurry. This first one was straightforward. We bike down to a certain distance, we find a sinkhole, and then we wander aimlessly throughout the woods for about 15 minutes looking for the flag, which was downslope of a sinkhole, but pretty much everything was downslope of the sinkhole, so Mark and I were just doing a circuit. And eventually we found it and headed back over and headed back up. Now here it would have been very wise for me to go back and look at some maps, because what we did was we were looking for an entrance to an area that we wanted to look for the control. And we couldn't find the entrance. All we found were no trespassing signs. So we decided to go to another area and look to see if we could get through. And we went there and couldn't find anything, and so we headed back again. This time we decided to go back to the TA and look to see if there was a map that would help us out. Sure enough, we found that one of the places that had no trespassing sign was the area to get through to the control. Stop right here. Instead of, there was a nice little no trespassing sign, but it was okay to go through. And actually, as we looked a little closer, it did say that it was the entrance to a wildlife area. So, and we knew the control was back up and in here. We just simply couldn't get to it with that other part of the bike ride. This time now, knowing that we could get there, we saw this little turn to our left. I just wanted to make sure that this was the correct turn, so I went a little further until I could see that trail up ahead of me. So you can actually see that there's a trail which I had marked on my map, and so now knowing that that was the correct location, I knew that this other trail was going to get us into the right spot. So we turned around, went back in, and we were looking for a control in a fern-covered swamp. We found the fern-covered swamp with no problem. As you can see, it's a very big fern-covered swamp, and we're looking for a hog wallow in a fern-covered swamp. We didn't know which side of the fern-covered swamp it was, and the mark on the map essentially just showed it being in the middle of a marshy area that was a large marshy area. So all those little trails you see are essentially game trails, pig trails. But after a little bit of wandering through the swamp, Mark came upon it, and we were back on the bikes and heading back out. Pretty uneventful. This is 11 hours into the race. Nice thing is we have a nice little tailwind as we head out of here, and we had a nice fast bike ride back to the finish. By the way, that on the right is a little private property that we were avoiding. But easy ride back onto pavement here, and really incredible area. It was really sad there were a couple of controls that we didn't have time to get. Maybe go a little faster next time, and pay a little bit closer attention to the navigation, because there are a couple of spots that I just was not paying attention and having a good time. All in all, though, absolutely fantastic race, and enjoyed it immensely. So that's it.